I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, the homies? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, back again for another UFC full card breakdown and predictions video. This one's going to be Glover Teixeira versus Thiago Santos. Very good main event, very difficult to predict. Before we get into the main event, we're going to start with the first fight, go through the card, make some predictions, talk about these fights. If you haven't already, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't too. Alright guys, let's get into it. First fight on this card, we have Gustavo Lopez versus Anthony Birchak, and we're going to start with Gustavo. So Gustavo comes into this fight 11 wins, 5 losses as a pro. 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Debuted against Merab, was completely outmatched in that fight, but there's no shame in that loss. Gustavo is fighting out of Extreme Couture, which is a very decent training camp. Originally supposed to fight Felipe Colares, now fighting Anthony Birchak. Gustavo by no means the best fighter we've ever seen on tape, but he's pretty composed in a kickboxing setting, also has a wrestling background, which seems to be his foundation as a fighter. The opponent, Anthony Birchak, comes into this fight 2 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. 15 wins, 6 losses as a pro. Anthony is also primarily a wrestler, loves to use his jiu-jitsu. Since getting cut from the UFC, Birchak went on a losing streak, hasn't really done much to warrant the call back to the UFC. He's pretty lucky to be getting this chance. Short notice fights are always difficult to predict. Both of these guys somewhat decent wrestling backgrounds, so it could come down to the kickboxing. I think Gustavo seems a little bit more composed there. Birchak will use boxing pressure to grapple the opponent, look to take the back and choke his opponent out. If he can't do that, I think it's because Gustavo is controlling the movement, controlling the kickboxing. So I'm going to take Gustavo Lopez via decision. My numbers would be Gustavo minus 150, Birchak plus 120. It really is a difficult one to be confident in. Like I said, both of these guys have wrestling backgrounds, so it could come down to the kickboxing. But the fight is a short notice fight. You know, both of these guys, not a lot of time to prepare, so I wouldn't be too confident in either side. Max Griffin versus Ramiz Brahimaj, and we're going to start with Max. So Max comes into this fight 3 wins, 6 losses inside the UFC. Quite a well-rounded fighter. His wrestling isn't bad at all. His kickboxing is good too. The question I'm asking myself here is Max Griffin really high level in 2020? His UFC record is starting to look pretty bad. Even when Max Griffin has a good fight, it's still pretty close. The path to victory for Max is quite clear in this matchup though. The opponent, Ramiz Brahimaj, comes into this fight 8 wins, 2 losses as a pro, making his UFC debut. Training out of Fortis MMA, a camp that all of us appreciate and acknowledge to be one of the best camps at the moment. Ramiz is primarily a grappler. If you look at the tape, we can see what Ramiz is looking to do. He wants to get in there, take his opponent down and find that submission. From the tape we've seen, he's pretty good at doing that. So the path to victory for Max would simply be to avoid the game plan of Ramiz. If Ramiz wants to use his grappling, Max Griffin should look to counter that with good footwork, potentially target the calf of Ramiz to slow his footwork down. Just keep it standing, right? But I actually think Ramiz has a good chance in getting Max Griffin down here, and if he does, I think it could be over in that first round. So I'm going to predict Ramiz via submission in round number 1. My odds would be Ramiz minus 110, Griffin minus 110. And here's why. So round 1, if that doesn't happen, I think Max Griffin could use experience and go on to win that second and third round. Now Ramiz, outside of round 1, is he going to do that? Is he going to be able to take Max Griffin down? Keep controlling him on the mat? I'm not too sure. That's where it gets interesting. But round 1, we could have a TJ Laramie, right? We could have one of those situations where Ramiz gets the takedown, takes the back, and it's a wrap. I'm going to predict round 1, but if it doesn't happen, be sure to look out for Max Griffin to use his experience. The current line is Max Griffin minus 140, Ramiz returning plus 120. So yeah, a lot of people putting some faith into Max Griffin's experience at the highest level. If he can survive that first round, yeah, a lot of people are seeing that, but I'm going to take a shot on Ramiz here. Moving into the next one, we have Darren Elkins versus Eduardo Garagorri, and we're going to start with Darren. So Darren comes into this fight 14 wins, 8 losses inside the UFC. A veteran of the sport, a fighter that all of us can appreciate, because if you can't appreciate a fighter like this, we can't appreciate any fighter. This man is the definition of tough as nails. He will continue to take your best punches without even considering the option of quitting. Darren's wrestling and BJJ also a highlight of his game that goes unnoticed. You look at the way he wrapped up Michael Johnson in that win. Beautiful, beautiful work from Darren Elkins. The opponent, Eduardo Garagorri, comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. Garagorri's UFC debut wasn't the best, but he was still able to get a win. Then he went on to fight Ricardo Ramos in a fight where he basically got taught that undefeated fighters will lose unless your name's Habib. Ramos was able to take Eduardo down, use his BJJ, and that was that. I believe Darren Elkins must look to wrestle in this fight. I'm not saying he can't stand with Eduardo, because Darren will stand with anyone, right? But if we're looking at the smart path to victory for Darren, it's to wrestle. If Garagorri can show us improved takedown defense, keep this fight kickboxing, I really wouldn't be surprised if Garagorri outpointed Darren in that type of fight. And that's actually what I'm going to go with here. Am I confident? Not really. But I wouldn't be confident in Darren Elkins choosing to fight a smart fight, choosing to wrestle. So my prediction's going to be Garagorri via decision. My numbers would be Garagorri minus 120, Elkins plus 110. It really is a difficult fight because we know Darren Elkins has the ability. He can go in there, wrap Garagorri up and just make it easy work. But will he do that? Will he actively go into this fight and choose to use his advantage? And if he does, can Garagorri show us improved takedown defense? My pick is going to be the Argentine, but like I said, I'm not confident in either side. Current line, we have Garagorri plus 200, which is insane. Darren Elkins returning minus 250. Now, if Darren does go in there and chooses that path to victory and makes it look, really easy, the way Tom Breeze went in there and made it look so easy against KB Buller and warranted that huge price, we have to give him credit. If Darren does do that, I give him credit. But I think Garagorri, keeping it in a kickboxing situation, not going to the mat with Darren Elkins, I think he has a good chance. Darren loves to get hit. I mean, does he love to get hit? Probably not, but he takes a lot of damage and he doesn't quit. So Garagorri does have a chance if he keeps it kickboxing. Marcus de Lima versus Alexander Romanov, and we're going to start with the Brazilian. So Lima comes into this fight 6 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. A light heavyweight choosing to fight at heavyweight. Lima has been around for some time now. Seems to struggle with fighters that can take him to the mat, which is weird because Lima is pretty experienced in the world of jiu-jitsu, but we don't see that carry over to the octagon. Lima is coming off a beautiful knockout win over Ben Sassoli. We do have to give him credit for that because that knockout, beautiful, picture perfect. The opponent, Alexander Romanov, comes into this fight 1-0 inside the UFC. This man is a smasher. A sumo wrestler, I believe. Romanov is looking to end up on top. If he does, it's dangerous. You don't want to be stuck underneath this dude, whether it's a submission or ground and smash. Romanov is a pretty dangerous grappler. The pick is going to be Romanov. I believe he has no trouble in taking Lima down. From there, I basically expect domination. Could Lima use his jiu-jitsu effectively for the first time? Now would be a great time to do that. Or could Lima sleep Romanov the way he slept Ben Sisoli before the takedown comes? It's not impossible, but I do have to go with what I believe is the most possible. And that's Romanov smashing Lima with ground and pound. So I'm going to take Romanov via TKO in round number 1. My numbers would be Romanov minus 300, Lima plus 260. And the actual numbers, we have Romanov getting close to minus 400 now. Lima coming in plus 300. Can't argue too much. I mean, for Lima to win this fight, it would be use his jiu-jitsu on the mat, which he hasn't done. Or it would be sleep Romanov before that takedown comes. I think the takedown comes in the first round, and I think Romanov gets pretty nasty after that takedown. Man, this is a difficult one, guys. Trevin Giles versus Bevan Lewis, and we're going to start with Trevin. So Trevin comes into this fight 2 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. I'm still not exactly sure what Trevin is best at. Is it striking? Is it wrestling? Is it jiu-jitsu? Is it purely round 1? Trevin gasses out pretty badly in every fight. After that 7 or 8 minute mark, he usually gasses out. He had a very close fight with James Krause in his last one. A fight that I felt went the wrong way, personally. Trevin does have knockout power. The type of power that could put Bevan Lewis out in that last round. Just like Uriah Hall did. The opponent, Bevan Lewis, comes into this fight 1 win, 2 losses inside the UFC. Bevan was having a brilliant UFC debut against Uriah, right up until the moment he wasn't. Against Darren Stewart, he looked gun shy. His mental didn't look right in that fight. You could see a huge difference after that knockout loss in his debut. Bevan Lewis was getting comparisons to John Jones before his UFC debut. The elbow attacks up against the fence, the knee attacks up against the fence, the output, the kicking ability. Make no mistake, guys, I do believe Bevan Lewis has good potential in the sport of MMA. But this really is a who the hell knows type of fight. Skill wise, I'm leaning towards Bevan Lewis, but the flip side is Trevin Giles just gets it done at some point in the fight. Whether it's round 1, 2 or 3, he could just sleep Bevan at any given moment. But if that doesn't happen, I think Bevan is using a variety of kicks, just fighting safe and smart. Really difficult to be confident in either side, but I'm going to side with Bevan Lewis via decision. My odds would be Bevan minus 140, Trevin plus 110. It really is a difficult one to predict. And the actual odds, even closer than my odds, we have Bevan Lewis minus 115, Trevin coming back minus 115. And that's exactly the impression this matchup gives me, you know. Bevan Lewis can look great for 8, 9, 10 minutes, and then Trevin Giles just sleeps him. You know, it's one of those ones, guys. Let me know who you're taking below, though, because I'd love to know, do we have more subscribers on Bevan or more subscribers on Trevin, right? Let me know below. Chikadze versus Jamie Simmons, and we're going to start with Giga. So Giga comes into this fight 4-0 inside the UFC, training out of King's MMA. Giga is my boy. He's cashed as an underdog 3 times for me now. I haven't gone against him yet. It's working beautifully. And that's because Giga works beautifully inside the octagon. This man is a very high level kickboxer, a brilliant point fighter, a master of measuring range with his kicks. Still waiting to get his first finish, and that's because his whole game is to control, not to finish. The opponent, Jamie Simmons, comes into this fight 7 wins, 2 losses as a pro, making his UFC debut. Jamie is quite fresh in his MMA career. From the tape I've seen, it's very clear this dude is still developing. Seems to be primarily a wrestler, a fighter that's looking to take you down and use his jiu-jitsu. I think this fight is a mismatch. Giga should be getting a big step up in competition, not a big step down in competition. Jamie has everything to play for. Giga has nothing to play for other than getting his first finish inside the UFC. So it looks like that's what I'm going to predict here. I think Giga could hit Jamie with several nasty kicks, whether those are low kicks, body kicks, or even finish with a high kick. I think Chikadze could finish this fight. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Giga by a TKO in round number 2. My numbers would be Giga minus 400, Jamie plus 360. And the current line, we have Giga minus 600, Jamie plus 450, plus 500. Can you argue with it though? Giga is many levels above Jamie, in my opinion. You know, cashed 3 times as an underdog. You know, I haven't gone against Giga yet, and I certainly won't be going against him on a short notice fight against Jamie Simmons. Can Jamie Simmons do it? It wouldn't be the craziest thing we've ever seen, but yeah, the pick's gotta be Giga. Alright, the homies, you know what time it is. Oh god, I got a call. That can wait. Okay, so if you've been smoking this whole time, amen. If you're not a smoker, amen. I've completely messed this up. Let me that call blooper. Do we keep it in it? Do we keep it in? Let's start again. I'm going to keep this in. Let's start again. If you've been smoking this whole time, amen. If you've waited to smoke with me, amen. If you're not a smoker but you enjoy the smoke breaks, triple amen, gang. I hope all of you guys are doing good. Your health, all of it. I hope it's good. Now, I say this every week, right? I hope your health is good. I've actually had an ear infection recently. Yeah, an ear infection. So my health hasn't been where it's normally at, but the infection is going. So I'm good. I'm good. I hope all of you guys are doing good too. I do want to mention 2 things before I get into speaking about some motivation during this smoke break. Those 2 things are, number 1, my Instagram is on screen now if you want to hit me up outside of YouTube. Number 2, we're getting closer and closer to 10,000 subscribers. And you know, that's a benchmark, right guys? 10k, that's a big deal. We have to do something for this 10k special. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do a free £100 parlay for whoever, right? We're not going to do it now. So don't worry about posting in the comments, you know, if you want to join the giveaway. Don't worry about it now. But I'm just letting you know, we're getting closer and closer. So when we do get to 9.7, 9.8k, I'm going to start bringing it up that, you know, there's $100 free bet. Leave your comments down below. But like I said, it's not happening now. I'm just letting you know that's what I'm thinking towards in the future. Okay guys, here's the motivation this week, right? The nature of life, in my opinion, is growing. You stop growing, you start dying. Alright, let me say that again. The nature of life is growth. When you stop growing, you start dying. Step into tension, guys. Become comfortable being uncomfortable. How many of us try to avoid that uncomfortable feeling, right? It's natural. You try to be comfortable in life as much as you can. But let me ask you this. Do we ever grow when we are uncomfortable? Think about it. Really think about what I just said to you there. We don't grow during comfort. We grow in the uncomfortable times. An example would be muscle building, right? For any bodybuilders listening to this, you can relate. To build muscle, you must go through tension of the repetitions. Muscle growth doesn't happen when you avoid the pain. When you avoid that uncomfortable feeling of the last few reps. Arnold once said, it only counts when it hurts. The first few repetitions, they're nothing, right? It's when the reps become hard, is when it really counts. The reps that are hard, those are the growing repetitions. This is just an example though, right? Of stepping into tension. Embrace tension. Become comfortable being uncomfortable. You can accomplish everything you manifest. You just have to work hard. Embrace the grind. Embrace the tension of growing. You will become more powerful when you accept growth is uncomfortable. It doesn't matter what you're working towards, guys. If it's uncomfortable, chances are you're growing, man. So keep working on it. Whatever it is, guys, I don't care what it is. I said this months ago, you can be a bin man. I don't care. If you are working towards something and you feel that uncomfortable feeling during your grind, keep going. Alright? Amen to that. Amen to that, guys. Truly. I hope all of you guys have had a beautiful smoke break. Keep smoking during this main card. If you're not a smoker too, you know, a lot of people hit me up and say, hey, I don't smoke anymore, bro, but I love the smoke breaks, love the motivation, love it all, right? So keep going on what you're doing. Keep doing it, keep grinding, keep pushing, and you're going to get to where you want to get to. The only person that can stop you is yourself. And so many people, when I said that, just said the same thing as me. I'm telling you, I know what you guys are like, watching these breakdowns, listening to these breakdowns. I know so many of you just said yourself the same time I said it. And you know what that is, guys? That's a whole gang of people that think the same way. You have to surround yourself with people that think like you, because they're going to the same place as you, man. Alright, guys, let's get into this main card. First fight on this main card, we have Claudia Gadelha versus Jan. And we're going to start with the Brazilian, Claudia. So Claudia comes into this fight 7 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a jiu-jitsu practitioner. Claudia's striking has evolved over the years, but still nowhere near the level of a natural kickboxer. Her punching power seems to be the best ability Claudia has when it comes to striking. Not really the type of fighter that measures range with kicks. She's purely, let me wrestle you over and over until you give up the submission type of fighter. Now, if she's not doing that, it's big punches on the feet. You look at the fight against Angela Hill. There was a few times Claudia caught Angela Hill with a few powerful punches up top. But if you take those punches away, you know, she wasn't mixing it up with kicks. It just looked like a grappler who was kept on the feet, who was forced to land powerful punches, right? And that's what I'm trying to say. Claudia Gadelha's best ability when it comes to striking is the power punches. It doesn't look like a natural kickboxer. The opponent, Jan, comes into this fight 5-0 inside the UFC. Primarily a kickboxer. Jan really has impressed me so far in her UFC career. Her ability to land outside and inside calf kicks. Just a brilliant kickboxing point fighter. Basically cut from the same cloth as Chikadze. Jan hasn't fought anyone with the wrestling that Claudia has. So that's the big question here. Could Claudia wrestle Jan to the mat round by round and keep her there? Or even find a submission? I wouldn't say she can't, right? I will say though, Claudia really slows down in that second round. Her takedowns become very telegraphed. And because of that, I see Jan being able to kickbox more than not in this fight. Especially in those last 10 minutes. My prediction is going to be the kickboxer scores more with her kickboxing than the grappler does with her grappling. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Jan via decision. My numbers would be Jan -170, Claudia +140. And the actual line, we have Jan coming in -145, -150, Claudia returning +120, +125. I agree. I agree with that line. Claudia should be the underdog, not by much. Jan should be a favourite, not by much. Yeah, who disagrees with that line? Jan, in my opinion, in those last 10 minutes, she's going to really show why she should have been the favourite, why she is the favourite. Claudia, I believe, becomes more of an underdog as this fight ticks on. Round 1 is going to be interesting though, because we know Claudia is a beast in that first round. Moving into the next one, we have Ian Heinisch versus Brendan Allen. And we're going to start with Ian. So Ian comes into this fight 3 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a wrestler. Ian is really starting to find himself at the highest level. Had a couple setbacks to Brunson and Omari. But we've got to look at what Ian has done. He's competed very well with some good jiu-jitsu guys. I don't question his wrestling. His wrestling is very, very good. The question I do have is, can Ian Heinisch become a good technical striker over time? Because at the moment, it doesn't look too technical. There's mainly power in his striking. It worked against GM3, but not so much against Brunson, That's the question I'm really asking myself of Ian Heinisch. The opponent, Brendan Allen, comes into this fight 3-0 inside the UFC, primarily a jiu-jitsu practitioner, with some really, really strong wrestling too. I haven't gone against Brendan yet. He's cashed as an underdog a couple of times, even against Home Alone, Kevin Holland, who's a very good fighter. We all love Kevin Holland. Brendan is a little bit like Ian in the sense that he isn't a technical striker as of right now. But the fun thing about this fight is both of these guys are only improving fight by fight. So it should be fun to see who's looking sharper in the kickboxing. Super difficult fight to predict. I think Brendan Allen may just edge it though. Whether it's slightly outscoring Ian with a couple of strikes here and there, or just ending up in a couple positions on the mat, I have to go with Brendan Allen. Could Ian potentially starch Allen the way he did GM3? Maybe he can. But I think Brendan Allen is just a little bit more skillful. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Brendan via decision. My numbers would be Brendan -130, Ian +100. And the actual odds, both of these guys are -110, which really tells me, the feeling I have in the breakdown of this fight is spot on. Brendan Allen is a really, really good grappler, has really good jiu-jitsu, but I'm thinking, can Brendan Allen show us improvements with his striking? Ian Heinisch is a really, really good wrestler who's proven that against a few jiu-jitsu guys already. But my thinking is, can Ian show us he's a good technical striker? The kickboxing is going to be really interesting in this fight. I think the grappling is going to be very interesting too, because Ian has brilliant wrestling. Brendan has brilliant jiu-jitsu. He can get nasty on the mat too, slice you open with some elbows. Let me know who you're taking below, guys. I'm sure we're going to be split on this one. Raoni Barcelos versus Khalid Taha. And we're going to start with Raoni. So Raoni comes into this fight 4 wins, 0 losses inside the UFC. This man is a very well-rounded fighter. He can wrestle. His jiu-jitsu is very sharp. His boxing is nasty. Kicking's nasty. Forward pressure. Conditioning. Now that I think about it, Raoni Barcelos has the potential to one day fight for a title. I really believe that. And, I make these statements on this channel because these are just my opinions, right? They're just my opinions. I made this statement similar to Davis and Figueiredo. I mentioned my belief in Figueiredo way back many years ago, right? I said Figueiredo could one day be a champion. And that was on the same breakdown as his fight against Formiga. And someone came to that breakdown and they, you know, obviously that was one of his losses, right? Formiga was able to beat Figueiredo. I know I've gone off track here, guys, but bear with me. But someone came back after that and said, hey, you overhyped. You overhyped Figueiredo. But now we see, right? It's 2020, now we see Figueiredo really did have the potential that I spoke about years ago. I think Raoni Barcelos is one of these guys who could really fight for a title one day, regardless of what happens, right? He really does. Now that I think about it, Raoni Barcelos really does have a nasty skill set, a well-rounded skill set. The opponent, Khalid Taha, comes into this fight 2 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Primarily a wrestler, I believe. However, you look at this man's punching power. He's nasty. If Taha isn't choosing to wrestle, his punches always carry that danger of, if this one connects properly, the opponent is going to sleep. That's exactly what Boston Salmon experienced. Against Bruno Silva, Taha showed us later in that fight, if you get tired, he doesn't mind taking you down, smothering you, working towards finishing you with a choke. Both of these fighters, I believe, have a bright future in the sport, regardless of this outcome. However, we do have to make a pick, and that pick for me is going to be the Brazilian. I think Raoni can outstrike Taha. The grappling should be interesting because Taha is very physically strong, probably stronger than Raoni. But the prediction has to be the Brazilian. I see real potential in this guy. The boxing, the kicking, the conditioning, forward pressure, the ground and pound, accuracy, all of it. Raoni Barcelos is a guy that I believe in, that I didn't even know I believed in until I turned the mic on. My odds are going to be Raoni minus 200, Taha plus 170. Co-main event, we have Andre Arlovski versus Tanner Boser, and we're going to start with the veteran. So Andre comes into this fight 18 wins, 13 losses inside the UFC. The former heavyweight champion, a fighter that most definitely shouldn't be fighting anymore, but that's not my decision to make. It's just an opinion. It's no one's decision to make other than Arlovski's. Taking a look at Arlovski's recent UFC fights, he was able to outclass Ben Rothwell and Philippe Lins. Got completely destroyed by a fighter that packs a lot of power in his kickboxing ability, Rosenstrike. Arlovski is one of these guys who is always going to be in close fights from here out, unless your name's Ben Rothwell. Then it's going to look pretty one-sided. The opponent, Tanner Boser, comes into this fight 3 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Primarily a karate practitioner. Tanner moves brilliantly for a heavyweight, super quick on his feet. The speed in his knockout against Lins was just unbelievable. I forgot how nasty that combination was until I watched it again today. And after watching it, I watched it again and again. It was that beautiful. Can Arlovski beat Tanner Boser? Yes, he can. But how does he do that? I think he's going to have to sleep Boser for that to happen, because I cannot see Arlovski outpointing Boser over 15 minutes. Like I mentioned, Boser is a karate practitioner. He's very quick on his feet, has a variety of kicks that he loves to use. There isn't going to be many guys who can outpoint Tanner Boser. The fact that Cyril Gane did really highlights how good Gane is too. My prediction is going to be fireworks for Boser. Either a round 1 finish or a 15-minute masterclass. My pick is going to be Boser via TKO in round number 1. And my numbers would be Boser minus 220, Arlovski plus 190. And the actual numbers currently, we have Boser minus 300, Arlovski plus 250. Now, would Boser's line be that deep if he didn't finish Lins the way he did? Probably not. Probably not. So we do have to take a little bit of money off of that minus 300. I wouldn't price him that deep. Arlovski's, he's a veteran, has a lot of experience in the game. I wouldn't count him out completely. Arlovski can win this fight, but I think he has to go in there and sleep Tanner Boser. And if a guy like Cyril Gane goes 15 minutes with Tanner Boser, I think Arlovski most likely goes 15 and loses. It's a massive ask for Arlovski. I don't see it happening. I think Tanner Boser gets another win here. But let me know who you're taking below, guys. Alright, main event, my homies. We have Glover Teixeira versus Thiago Santos. And just before we get into it, I want to say, if you're someone listening to this breakdown right now, chances are you enjoy listening to me break down fights. And I just want to say thank you very much for that, because I love doing this and I love that people enjoy my content, My Instagram is UFC Lay. If you want to hit me up, it'll be at the end of this video. Alright, homies, main event, Santos versus Glover. Let's start with the Brazilian. Which one? Thiago Santos. So Thiago comes into this fight 13 wins, 6 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a Muay Thai striker, a black belt in Muay Thai. Former 185er, been at 205 for a few fights now. Thiago is coming off that split decision loss to John Jones. A fight that was pretty close considering Santos had 2 broken knees in that fight. I mean, it's not like those knees just broke on their own. John Jones did that in the fight. Prior to that fight, Santos had been smashing everyone. Jan Blachowicz, Jimmy Manuwa, Eric Anders, Kevin Holland. Even at 185, Thiago Santos, if you go back and watch his UFC career, this guy's a killer. You don't want to stand and trade too much with Santos. There's a 90% chance fireworks will happen if Santos is able to keep striking with you. The opponent, Glover Teixeira, comes into this fight 14 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. A super well-rounded fighter, a jiu-jitsu fighter, a strong wrestler, a brawler, a fighter that's seen it all, can do it all. Glover is coming off a win against Lionheart. We got to really see the ability of Glover again in that fight. I took Lionheart in that fight. I'm sure a lot of you guys did too. But again, we got to see why Glover is still fighting at the highest level. I have mixed feelings on this fight, guys. I think the surgery Santos is coming off could be a factor in this matchup. The knee is nothing to mess with, right? Once you start having knee problems, it's hard to be the same. Could Glover potentially target the knee of Santos? He could. The knee is definitely a concern. Taking the injury away from this fight, I still think Glover has a good chance. He could TKO Santos at any given moment, considering he's a lifelong brawler, pretty much. He could also choose to wrestle Santos late, search for a submission. Now let's hit the flip side, guys. Santos is a black belt in Muay Thai, a guy that can put anyone out on his day. Santos himself could sleep Glover at any given moment. Guys, this main event is dangerous. It really is a 50-50 fight. But I'm going to side with the Brazilian. Which one? Thiago Santos. I'm sure a lot of you guys are looking at that plus money, and I really can't argue too much against it, If anything, I argued for it, right? That's what I do in these breakdowns. I break down both sides. But I will say this. Thiago Santos is a dangerous striker who can sleep Glover at any given moment. So I'm going to take Thiago via TKO in round number 1. My numbers would be Santos minus 150, Glover plus 120. I would say that's a pretty fair line. And the actual line, we have Santos minus 250, Glover coming back plus 200. That's insane. Glover Teixeira has shown us he's a high-level fighter. His jiu-jitsu, brilliant. Wrestling, durability, the ability to just keep fighting at 42 years old. Glover Teixeira is a nasty guy, and I'm sure he's going to look to kick the calf of Thiago Santos behind the knee, look to target that surgery, which is, you know, you don't want to target any area of anyone's surgery, but when it comes to combat, you absolutely do. And I'm sure Glover Teixeira is going to do that. My pick is going to be Thiago though. I mean, this guy he's a smasher, right? You get in there with this guy and there's a 90% chance, like I said, if you strike with him, something's going to happen. Whether you're able to put him out or he's going to put you out. That's what you get in a stand-up battle against Thiago Santos. Alright guys, I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown. Like I said, I really love breaking down these fights and I hope you enjoyed them. Be sure to smash that Hamzat button. Be sure to smash the subscribe button and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Alright, peace.